So I enjoy playing rhythm games, and one of my absolutely favorite ones has to be Osu. And please don't go, it gets interesting, I swear. And while I'm not at a point where I would call myself necessarily good, I am at a point where I can say that different input methods do have an effect on the songs that I can play. Or at the very least, I can tell the difference between different keyboards and switches that I'm using, at least to some degree. I even made myself my own little keypad with an Arduino and Cherry MX Reds because I didn't like how my keyboard felt. Being a massive hoarder, I managed to find myself with 5 different keyboards, each with different switches. I'm gonna go ahead and try them all out in Osu and compare how they feel. Alright, so I've got 5 keyboards here. Well, 4 keyboards in the keypad. And we're gonna start off with a classic IBM Model M. This one's produced in 1989, and it's a PS2 model, but I've got this USB adapter for it. This keyboard uses buckling springs over a membrane dome, and these are pretty heavy. They're really tactile, and I think the actuation force comes in at around 60 to 70 grams or something like that. If you listen closely, you can actually hear the springs in the switches. Let's see if I can get that. So they've got a little ping to them, which you can hear as you press down on the key. It's a pretty neat keyboard, you know, super old-fashioned, and I think you could kill somebody with this if you hit them. But honestly, it's pretty amazing for typing on, and we'll see how it does in Osu. Alright, up next, I've got this Apple extended keyboard, Model 1. And this is also from the late 80s. Still have the classic rainbow Apple logo here, which I love. And this keyboard also has F13, 14, and 15. So now you know they exist. I think this keyboard uses Alps Salmons, and they're supposed to be tactile, though you definitely don't feel as much of a bump on these ones as you would on, say, MX Blues or even on the buckling springs. And the actuation force, I think, also comes out to around 60 Gs. And funny enough, this keyboard was actually the first keyboard I used when I played Osu. I thought it was okay. It was maybe not as great as some of these newer keyboards. These switches feel just a little, not sloppy, but they didn't feel as precise as some of the other keyboards that I've used. This one I just happened to pick up recently, so I decided to throw it in for fun. This is an Apple Bondi Blue keyboard. It goes with an old iMac that I recently picked up. And it's got this neat little kickstand. These, however, are just rubber domes. These are pretty old and used, so kind of mushy now. I don't really expect great things out of this keyboard, but I guess we'll see. Couldn't tell you what this actuation force is. It honestly feels pretty light. This keyboard's pretty old, and I think it was used a lot, so yeah, not expecting a lot out of this one. And last up for keyboards, I've got the lovely Belle Delphine Belle Delphine keyboard, manufactured with Ghost. This is a Ghost A1, so since it's the A1 model, aluminum backplate. And something this keyboard has that none of the others have had so far, RGB. Oh yeah, now you know this is a real gamer keyboard. So this uses Gateron red switches. They're really light. I think the actuation force is around 45 grams. These actually feel amazing for Osu. They bottom out really quickly, and they're pretty consistent in key feel. I really like using this keyboard, actually. Unironically, even without the branding. Okay, I bought this keyboard for the branding, but that's beyond the point. Alright, and finally, I've got this keypad, which I made specifically for use with Osu, with Amelia Watson themed keys. Best VTuber around me. So this runs on an Arduino Micro, USB Type-C. Or it's actually an Arduino clone, I think. It's a Teensy? I'm not sure. But yeah, so it runs an Arduino code. It was pretty simple to set up. This uses Cherry MX Red switches. So they're pretty similar to Gateron Reds. They have also about 45 grams of actuation force. These and the Gaterons are both linear, so they're really great for gaming. And I like this. I went with a 4 key layout in case I ever want to play Osu Mania or any other games which require 4 keys, you know, like, what is it? Muse Dash, that's it. So, yeah, this was a fun little project to put together. It has a 3D printed ABS plastic case, So I don't think the key feel is quite as nice as the Ghost, but it serves my needs pretty perfectly. And it was tiny, pretty cheap to put together. And that is the showing for all the keys and switches that I'll be using. And let's go ahead and try them out in Osu.
Alright, so in order to test these keyboards, I played the same 4 songs in the same order on all 5 of them. Everything was kept the same except for the keyboard I used, so that should have been the only variable that changed between each one of my tests. As it turns out, my experience varied quite a bit between each one, even more so than I initially expected. Let me go over how I felt about each keyboard. First off is going to be this Apple Bondi Blue keyboard. This was definitely my least favorite of the bunch. The keys just felt a little too mushy for me, and they didn't always felt like they sprung back in time. Especially when I was doing streams, trying to press buttons quickly just didn't feel like it worked. I felt as if I was missing inputs. To be fair though, this might also be because this keyboard is getting close to 30 years old, and my example is pretty worn. Even typing normally doesn't feel that great. This definitely isn't my keyboard of choice, but hey, it matches my iMac G3, and it was interesting to pair this older rubber dome keyboard with Osu. Alright, next up is the Apple Extended Keyboard. Despite being older, this one definitely felt a lot better to play on than the Bondi did, thanks to the ALP mechanical switches that it had. I actually started playing Osu in college on this keyboard, so I'm somewhat used to it, but I haven't used it in a little while at this point. These ALP switches are relatively tactile, though they feel a little bit soft compared to newer tactile switches I've used, like blues or pale greens. But again, I'm not sure how much of that might be due to just how old this keyboard in particular is. This keyboard honestly doesn't feel too bad to play on, but I do have to say one thing is it doesn't feel really ergonomic to me. I feel like it lifts my wrist a little bit much and wasn't too comfortable to play on for a long time. Not bad, but there's definitely other keyboards that I would pick rather than this one. Alright, now this one is a fun one, a classic IBM Model M. First of all, this is a really loud keyboard. I actually got banned from using it where I work just because it really bothered people in the office. These buckling spring switches feel great to type on, but I gotta say alternating back and forth really quickly with them with just 2 fingers can get kind of fatiguing. Not sure if that makes any sense, but I felt as if I got tired more easily when I was using this keyboard. During streams, I felt as if I couldn't keep up quite as quickly because of how heavy the keys felt, with how much I had to press down on them, which is honestly probably what contributed to my fatigue. Great keyboard to type on. I love this thing. I love how it looks. I love how it sounds, but definitely not my favorite for Osu. Alright, now here's where things get really good for me, and not just because it's the Bell Delphine keyboard. Okay, maybe it's mostly because of Bell, but anyways, here we have the Ghost A1 keyboard with Gateron red switches. These are linear switches, and in my opinion, these are my favorite switches for Osu. They're fast, easy to press, don't tire me out as much, and personally they just feel really good for playing this game. I don't really have much else to say here other than that this keyboard would definitely be my top choice out of all of these that I've used so far. Also, it makes pretty lights and it's pink, which is all just a bonus. I mean, the keypad that I made also uses reds just because I found that I like them that much. So there really shouldn't be any difference with my Ame pad, right? Well, it is what I thought initially. Finally, here we have my Ame keypad, which I made specifically to play Osu with these custom keycaps. This has Cherry MX Reds, which are pretty similar to the Gateron Reds in the Bell Delphine keyboard, and as such, I honestly expected and I always felt like that these two perform basically the same, and I always felt like I played exactly the same on both. But I found out that I actually do a little bit better with this pad. I'd have to assume it's because it's more of a single focus device. I didn't feel as crowded or cluttered than when I was using a regular keyboard. I could basically on-point focus just on pressing the keys that I needed to. In fact, one of the songs I was using to test these keyboards was a song I basically never passed before. I was kind of just playing it just to try it out. All of a sudden, using this keypad, I finally managed to pass it. It's go ahead and watch me go through that song with all of my keyboards.
That was fast.
Come on! Come on! Ow.
I am really proud of that one. Genuinely, I didn't even think I was going to clear that song. I was kind of just using it, kind of a benchmark since I'd been having trouble with it and since it was pretty much full of streams, but hey, I actually managed to pass it, which proves that Red's 100% best switch for Osu. Just kidding. Obviously, this is all pretty much personal preference. I have found the switch that I like. I am going to be sticking with Red's, specifically my Ame pad. That seems to work the best for me. But this is just kind of a fun experiment for me, trying out all these different keyboards since I happen to have them around, and trying them in a rhythm game. I am glad that this pretty much shows that the effort I put into making that keypad, especially those custom keycaps. Custom keycaps, as it turns out, are not cheap. But hey, totally worth it, especially to show my love as a teammate. Anyways, I think that just about wraps it up for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.